Hello everyone, and today we can say welcome to the year 2023. And that's what our conversation is about today. What can we expect in 2023? Thank you very much, dear Mr. Wolff, for taking the time to talk to us today. I'll start directly with the German economy. Because Habeck has announced for 2023 he wants to color the German economy green. He speaks of climate neutrality. What does that mean for German companies and for the people? This is quite interesting if you look at Habeck. Well, Habeck himself is nothing more than a puppet, so it is controlled from behind, and by whom it is controlled, we have known that since November the 15th, 2022 at the latest, because on November the 15th, Habeck hired a chief economist named Mrs. Bartsch. Mrs. Bartsch worked for Morgan Stanley in London for 20 years. The main shareholder of Morgan Stanley, so the main shareholders, include Vanguard and BlackRock. And then she switched to BlackRock and now rushed straight from BlackRock to the German Ministry of Economic Affairs. And one has to say that politics is always made by the state secretaries and the advisors. That means not by the ministers. The ministers, these are people who just run from talk show to talk show. But the important people are always in the background. In our federal chancellery, for example, it is not Mr. Scholz who is responsible for really interesting economic issues, but his state secretary, and this is Mr. Cookies. He was at Goldman Sachs. BlackRock is also the main shareholder at Goldman Sachs. So the whole thing is actually about how do we implement BlackRock's policy. And BlackRock is very polarized towards climate neutrality, and they give these ETFs out, these exchange-traded funds. These are index-based funds, and it is big business. There is BlackRock's sub-company, iShares. This is the largest fund issuer, especially in the area of sustainability. This sustainability is a business principle of BlackRock, and Mr. Habeck then implements that as an obligent servant of these people. People are being duped in an unbelievable way because people think that the Greens are a pro-environmental party that has ecological goals. In reality, they have changed so much in the 42 years that they are nothing more today than the fig leaf for the largest investment company in the world, the largest investment consultancy in the world, and that is BlackRock. The financial system worldwide is dominated by BlackRock and Vanguard, and they also rule the German Ministry of Economic Affairs, and Mr. Habeck is nothing other than their puppet. Can we imagine the future like in a really bad science fiction movie? As they say, electric mobility, maybe even flying cars or something else? That's exactly what is aimed at. We are currently experiencing a technological revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, and that means that at some point we will live in smart cities where the cars will all drive autonomously and where the goods will then be brought to our house by drone. This whole nightmare vision that's being rushed forwards at the moment. And the insane thing about it is that the Greens are at the forefront here, even though that absolutely contradicts their principles from the past. It's the same as with the weapon deliveries. Actually, that would also contradict their principle from back then, but now we are so free and deliver weapons to the world. Yes, exactly. In the last election campaign, you even advertised that no weapons should be sent to crisis areas, and now they're the greatest advocates of it all. I mean, there has never been a more mendacious and unpleasant political party in Germany. I didn't particularly agree with any party, but what the Greens are doing, that's really the crowning glory. Yes, that's right, absolutely paradoxical. But they kept one promise, to increase taxes and duties. They definitely can. We see that in the inflation rate. Do you think the inflation rate is currently around 10%, flattens out, and we're back to the nice values to 1 to 2%? We will definitely never reach the nice values of 1 to 2% again. So this financial system that we're living under is broken. It's broken. And that has been kept alive artificially. The problem right now is we have this inflation now and it's accelerating. Whether this will continue in the same way next year will also depend on many other factors. So there will also be deflation tendencies in between when entire industrial sectors collapse. We are currently experiencing a major attack on small and medium-sized businesses. So in the next year, 2023, which is just beginning, we will see a whole series on insolvencies in the area of medium-sized companies. We're also going to see, as has just come out, a slew of of healthcare bankruptcies. Many hospitals are struggling to survive at the moment. So we are really facing very difficult economic times. And if a lot of things collapse, then of course it also be that there is an overhang in supply and that some prices then collapse. As far as the construction industry is concerned, for example, there may be huge price slumps where there probably won't be any. And what's likely to be the biggest problem over the next year, that's in the food sector. So in the food space, I see that inflation is likely to stay in the double digits and is like to pick up even further because we have a huge problem with the fertilizers, deliveries, and we have a huge problem with the subsequent deliveries of chips that we need for the agricultural machinery. Well, when it comes to something like agricultural problems, Bill Gates will surely take care of it to revolutionize the whole thing. It's quite interesting that he's becoming the largest landowner in the US and that the billionaires are buying more and more land at the moment because they are banking on this trend, on this process. The CDU Economic Council had criticized this crisis government, basically how everything is going now, and said this whole fully comprehensive mentality simply leads to a lot of job losses and to upheavals in the economy. So about the topic, is that even true now? I think we can see that now what that has led to. But what I want to ask is, are we now seeing tendencies towards socialism?
Sozialismus.
No, I don't think so. I also think that it is quite cheeky to blame the fully comprehensive mentality for all the jobs that we will lose. The jobs are going away because, on the one hand, we are currently experiencing a major attack on small and medium-sized businesses. So we are going to have a huge series of bankruptcies in the mid-sized sector. This is intentional because the platform economy is dominating everything at the moment. Just one example, Amazon is destroying one retailer after the other. Of course, these people are eventually end up as unemployed and will eventually have to be fed by the state. And I believe that we have to take a very close look at where the real causes are. One cause, which I just mentioned, is the attack on small and medium-sized businesses. And the second reason is precisely the incredible progress in artificial intelligence and the further development of technologies. This will lead to a lot of jobs being lost. And anyone who then claims that all of this is due to the fully comprehensive mentality of the employees is simply distracting from the real causes. And you have to say that you have to name the real causes and give the people a clear answer. In addition, there is the migration crisis, where it is repeatedly reported that there are already record values. What does that lead to? Well, first of all, the migration crisis we are having now will definitely be worse than the one we had last time. So the last high point was in 2015, when suddenly millions, straight people from the Arab and the North African region, but also from Asia, streamed here to Europe. The background is again an economic background. All of the measures taken over the last 2 or 3 years have caused social inequality to explode in an unimaginable way around the world. Today we have a much greater inequality between Europe and, for example, North Africa. And of course, that means that the social conditions are bad. And these people then leave their countries and then try to find their footing where they think they can live better. And that is exactly what has been fueled. In addition, we have seen in recent years that very many currencies in developing and emerging countries have lost a lot of value. That is, the purchasing power of this currency has dwindled. These people are getting poorer, and what do you do when you can't stand the poverty anymore? Then you try to find your footing there in countries where you think you can survive. So we are facing another huge wave of migration. Yes, and for all those who think it's actually the right thing to take in people completely, so not that that's the wrong thing, but if the government really wanted to change something, they would go to the cause and not to the symptom. Exactly. The cause is precisely this social inequality, which is absolutely exploding. It is also exploding in our country. That's just how it is at the moment. So we have been experienced a process of concentration of wealth for 3 years that has never happened before. And parallel to this process of concentration of wealth, there is also a process of concentration of power. So there are fewer and fewer powerful people who rule the world. And unfortunately, people always look at the government, and that's wrong. The government are not the decisive ones. The big corporations are decisive. The digital financial complex is decisive, and it has its own representatives. For example, people should look to Davos in January. That's where the WEF will meet. The next meeting is on January the 16th. And the WEF, the World Economic Forum, this has the world's largest corporation as partners. This has no government as its partners. All the governments dance to it. They have to show up there because they get their directives. But the really powerful in the world, these are the big IT companies and the big wealth managers. Yes, as you said, don't look at Mr. Habeck, but look at who is behind him and who makes the decisions. I agree. The next topic I also want to touch is the Ukraine-Russia war. This can be followed everywhere in our live ticker. Habeck's last statement speaking was, Russia is heading for defeat. Now the question is, of course, is that so? Will we see an end of this war in 2023? And there is always the Nostradamus prophecy for each year. And for the year 2023, he said 7 months of great war. Of course, it is also a matter of interpretation. Some say, does he mean the World War or something else? How do you see the situation? Is Russia really failing right now? Well, I don't see that Russia is failing at all. I mean, you just have to remember that Russia is the largest nuclear power in the world. They have more atomic bombs in the background than the USA. And Russia is infinitely larger than Ukraine. Of course, Ukraine has a few allies who are supplying them with weapons, including the German Greens who are making sure of that. But I don't see the end of it all. A lot of money is being made with this war at the moment, so the armaments industry is booming like never before. And it is also lit in other places in Europe. So we're seeing in Kosovo at the moment, it's being set on fire. Everything is being done there to ignite this war again using nationalist slogans, which we experienced there 20 or 25 years ago. I don't see anything getting better there. I don't think that we have to look at what does Mr. Habeck say either. Well, Mr. Habeck spouts so much nonsense that you just don't have to listen. And that means now, because I remember it at the beginning, it said, let's hold peace talks, but Russia doesn't want one. Now it is said Germany does not want any peace talks, whatever they decide. I see the agenda here in the background, because the agenda is running in the background. The 2030 agenda, that is the introduction of new money, that's total digitalization, the abolition of cash and so on. And that works in all countries. It's the same in Russia as it is in Ukraine and here with us. It is interesting that certain areas in Ukraine are even a bit further than here. An emergency situation is being used to enforce certain authoritarian measures. And that is for me also exactly what should happen in the next few years. We should all put into a forced situation in which we accept everything that is supposed to be done. Yes, and if you think in pitch holes and say, okay, just the West or something else, but it's the same with Russia, the same with the monetary system that is being exchanged. So you can look at both sides, and since we just mentioned cash, the UA has agreed to enforce another cash ban from 2023, namely the cash limit to 10,000 euro. Again, of course, because of noble goals such as money laundering or crime and so on. But basically, you have to say that there are already countries in Europe that have introduced it, which are already at 1,000 euro and still haven't seen a decrease in crime. So what's really behind it? The introduction of the new monetary system is behind it. So you want to abolish cash. It is not for nothing that there is the Better Than Cash Alliance that has now gathered around 40 governments behind it. So cash should be abolished, and there a new digital central bank money is to be introduced. I think that's the biggest topic of the next few years, because one has now, and it's interesting, this large-scale test has been in Nigeria. So I found out a little bit more all the time. This digital central bank money was introduced in Nigeria last year. And what I didn't know until now is that in Nigeria, already 30% of the population uses cryptocurrencies. And then you probably thought, out. If people use cryptocurrencies, then maybe you could easily foist the digital central bank money on them. And its attempt has gone horribly wrong. So only 0.5% of citizens accepted this money. So only the 60th of the people who also use cryptocurrencies. And the government has now reacted by really cracking down on cryptocurrencies. So there all sorts of bans have been issued by further restrictions cash. So at the ATMs in Nigeria, you can only withdraw a very limited amount of cash. You can see that its attempt to force money on the people of this digital central bank does not work the way some people imagine. And my assumption has been for 2 or about 3 years that this digital central bank money will eventually be imposed on all of us via this universal basic income. And in order to introduce the universal basic income, you have to put people in great needs. And I think that's exactly the agenda that's being purposed in the moment. The economy is driven into the wall. Although, of course, the big ones are always the beneficiaries. The middle class will be destroyed. We are experiencing this energy crisis. We are experiencing a war. We experience all kinds of problems on all fronts, so that in the end this new money can be foisted to us, and that's probably how it will go through. The crazy thing is, when this new money is introduced, it won't work. So you just have to think about it in Germany, because universal basic income means that everybody gets a certain amount from the central bank every month. If you think about the fact that everyone in Germany gets 1,500 euros a month, that would be an unbelievable sum. That would be over 120 billion per month. That would be 1.5 trillion a year that would be fed into this system. That would cause prices to take off and go through the roof. That would immediately lead to runaway inflation that won't work. They're just holding on this system for the moment because you think you can use authoritarian measures to force people to accept that. Klaus Schwab's advisor also said that because artificial intelligence is progressing so much, there are a lot of people who then have no work. So you have to see what you do with them. One thing is just metaverse and also universal basic income. So that's those do not boycott. Yes, exactly. The dream of them is that some people just vegetate and have no more work and only consume, which are then kept alive through the universal basic income. And with the basic income, they can have finance their entertainment because they no longer have a job. So this really is a horrific world rolling towards us. And the bad thing is that this is artificial intelligence makes it all possible. So at some point, there really have to be some limits set. At some point, you have to say, this is the end. Thank God, that's what people are saying at the moment. So the metaverse is a huge, huge failure. So people don't accept the VR glasses, this virtual reality glasses. You don't want to live like this. And I also believe that we are currently experiencing a counter movement in the whole area of digitalization, that people notice that when this starts to dominate their lives, that they somehow prefer to live in reality. This is basically the problem. Well, I see that too. You're planning a future like in a science fiction film, but people don't really have that big to decide. You can only reject it, but actually the great majority do not want that at all. Nevertheless, their future is planned in this direction. Yes, people have been scammed too. They have to have been betrayed. Nobody that is a normal person who pays digitally today does not even know what is happening in the background. He doesn't even know that he's giving away his data with every payment, and that in the background there is a huge swinging trade with his data. Individuals don't see it at all. He just sees, I walk by, hold out my cell phone, and that's faster for me than it used to be with cash. But if people all think of this, and I think people slowly realizing and getting it, if it's not just about paying, but it starts to dominate their whole life, then people will eventually drop out. So I think that the year 2023 will also bring out a huge rethinking, and a huge wave will set in against this whole digitization. I see it myself in the YouTube industry that there are a lot of people who didn't say anything in 2020 and neither in 2021, 2022. No, now towards the end of 2022, they start, oh, maybe Klaus Schwab has something behind it. You're slowly starting to wake up. Yes, exactly. That's simply because they just can't get away from their agenda. They have to follow through with this agenda in order to stay in power. And that is, of course, a great advantage for us. If you know exactly how your opponent ticks, it's like in the boxing ring. If you know your opponent is hit and the opponent can only throw these punches, then you can prepare for it. Then you can counteract it. And I think the alternative media that has taken off and gotten so popular. Elon Musk, for example, has just come into focus with all the Twitter revelations about what he said about himself. Does he want to change the world for the better? That's one of the big mysteries for me, how you can believe something like that. So you just have to look at what Elon Musk has done in the past and which companies he has found. And the reference to a company is enough, namely Neuralink. She's working on connecting the human brain to the internet via chips. So in such a way that you can then use the Google search engine with thought control. This is the worst form of transhumanism there is. And there are also these videos, anyone can watch them, where Elon Musk enjoys the fact that pigs can be controlled about their mind function. This is also absurd and so ridiculous to me, but I think Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter probably has a very different rationale. So I think there might be some plans to introduce a new private money somehow, a digital private money, via this platform. So Mark Zuckerberg has already tried that via Facebook. And I think that Elon Musk has further plans. And that he is now being stylized as a hero of freedom of expression, I think that's a great nonsense. So it's just a move on his part that he's letting all these people back on Twitter. But he has some completely different goals. The EU itself is already threatening him with sanctions. Not just Russia or China, but also Elon Musk is on the final list because he attacked freedom of the press, because he blocked on Twitter. The question is, do we even have freedom of the press? Certainly not. There is no freedom of the press at all. When a man like Elon Musk, an individual, can determine who is allowed to say what, then that is not freedom of the press. This is absolutely ridiculous, and it's completely idiotic to say Elon Musk is now the great friend of press freedom and he's helping all of us to voice our free opinion again. It's a small move for him. He'll get rid of them as quickly as it's useful to him. So Elon Musk has not become the richest person in the world for nothing, and it's also the entrepreneur in the USA who works most closely to the government and the secret services and who taps the largest subsidies. So this is a man who is the embodiment of the digital financial complex, and this digital financial complex is anything but democratic. And also the EU, which is currently talking about freedom of the press, as we have seen since 2020, what the media has been up to. But exactly, just like that we revealed the Twitter secret policies, or that there were visibly restrictions on Twitter and so on, only on Twitter, of course, we have never experienced anything like this, which is why the EU is now naturally out to fight it now. Right, that's really ridiculous. But we recently made a post in English and I'll translate it, because I think there's some truth to it, whatever he meant, because he wrote, to escape the matrix, you'd have to relearn everything you've been taught and reconstruct a whole new belief system based on critical thinking. And I think we are definitely the proponents of that. Would you say our children learn critical thinking in school?
Lernen unsere Kinder in der Schule kritisches Denken?
No, I don't think so. We haven't learned that either. So it's always the case that, well, there is a sentence from Karl Marx, the ruling thoughts are the thoughts of the ruling class. And that sentence still applies today. The world class can perhaps even be left out, but the ruling thoughts are the thoughts of the rulers. There is another saying, history is written by the victors. So all that, what we learned about history, we learn in such a way that those who hold power today are made to appear as the good guys. We were also taught in school that the Americans are the good guys. They liberated Germany back then after the Second World War. The fact that the Americans helped to bring Adolf to power was kept from us. The fact that the Americans' banks have already benefited enormously from the First World War, that was all concealed from us. So it's important to work through the whole story again. That would be very important. And that's from the point of view of the non-winners on this whole argument. I have to say that this statement is true. So I also definitely criticize the school system, what and how above all is taught. But how could you as a parent, for example, encourage that critical thinking in the next generation? It's very difficult because in schools the children are of course indoctrinated, and then of course you have to find a way, because of course that's very difficult when you start antagonizing your children at a very early level. So it's not that easy, but I think that with certain things you just have to say, you know what, question it, don't just leave it like that. But it's difficult because we're being indoctrinated from all sides, not just the school but the media, everything we read to, all very filtered and triple checked, and it gets worse every year because the possibilities of indoctrination are constantly being researched and improved. Yes, there are the little things like watching a movie, for example, a beautiful American war film. You already know that it went through certain sections, once through the Pentagon. Yes, I remember an example when I was only 15 or 15 years old. There was a book, The Secret Seducers, back then. It showed how the advertising industry seduced people without them noticing. And back then, for example, it was banned. There were always small supporting films in the cinema, and images were shown in the supporting films. Of the for example, of the desert, of someone who was incredibly thirsty and stuff like that. But those pictures disappeared so quickly that the people didn't even notice. But the advertising industry noticed that people, when the film started, then ice cream was sold beforehand, drinks were sold. People grabbed it a lot more if they saw these clips beforehand without realizing it. And of course, you can infiltrate people that way. And all these techniques, I mean, it's 50 years ago. These techniques have been further refined. You don't even know that techniques are used today. That's why I said conversations like these are so important and information is passed on. You can teach your children critical thinking by teaching them to question in every subject. Just a little, do not accept all, even what I say. Thinking yourself, ask questions. And it's really a difficult situation also with the teachers, because the person goes to school, and if he's a loggerhead all the time, it's a difficult subject. But teaching basically critical thinking is possible. And I think that this is a job of all of us, and just like the dissemination of informations like today. Exactly. Thank you very much for all these informations, very insightful, and we'll see what surprises the year 2023 has in store for us. I've just read a very good saying, it might fit in the end. There are two things you must never lose. One is the hope of that everything just keeps getting better, and the second is staying power until at this point. So I think that's pretty good ending to our conversation. Yes, that is it. That's very nice. Many thanks to you.